Welcome everybody to another episode of the Mind Right Game Tight Show. I'm your host, Michelle Morgan. I'm a transformational sports coach, which means I work with student athletes on the mental aspect of sport, working with them to enhance their mental mindset to be great in sports, but most importantly is using all those tools and traits that they're learning as a student athlete to take that into being triumphant in life, because we're going to spend a lot more time in life than we do in sports. I'm also the author of How Youth Triumph in Sports, Tools that Create a Triumphant Life, a life skills book that I wrote for student athletes as well, telling my journey of my ups and downs as a basketball player earning a basketball scholarship, to share my experiences so that the student athlete may also learn and understand what it is that we're trying to learn, and once again bringing those traits and skills into life as well, because that's where we're going to spend the majority of our time. And you can get my book on Amazon.com. Also, for more information about me, you can go to www.bethesoro.com. Also, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel right now. We have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Amber Warren. Amber is a former basketball player and current skill development specialist based in Oxnard, California. She is the founder of From the Blacktop, a basketball development program, and is the assistant varsity coach for Oxnard High School girls basketball program. Amber has been coaching and training boys and girls of all ages and levels of experience for 10 years. She also has a special interest in connecting physiology, neuroscience, and theory to basketball development. So thank you, Amber, for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So how did you get into the whole skills development as a coach, from a player to becoming a coach?
It's kind of the way I kind of got into coaching. I had a cousin actually who coached a travel basketball team, and he just asked me if I could help out. I think I had just finished a season of junior college basketball. So I was just like, sure. And I just remember the feeling that I got when I first fell in love with the game of basketball, fell in love with playing, was the same feeling I got when I first began coaching. So I immediately just began, I just immersed myself, consumed myself in information and reading up on different resources and tools as far as how to become the best possible coach that I could be. Now, I realized I learned a lot about myself when I began coaching, because I realized I was much more interested in developing skilled, creative players, as opposed to focusing on X's and O's and strategy, things like that. So that's what really motivated me to specialize in skill development. I was a little more concerned with the individual as opposed to, the team strategy game part of it.
And is that something that you've noticed about yourself, even as a player, when you actually played the game as well?
Oh, absolutely. I thought that everybody felt the same way. I know when I was a player, I loved playing for coaches that allowed me the freedom to, to utilize the skills that I have been developing, the freedom to be creative. But a lot of coaches are more interested in the X's and O's part of it, and I feel like can constrain players and keep them from really reaching their full potential. But then I meet players, that are actually more comfortable playing in that type of system. But for me, as a player, I definitely was more about creativity and kind of a free flowing game, more conceptualized, when we talk about offense, more concepts as opposed to, diagrammed plays, cuts, and movement, So that definitely had an impact on the way that I coached, obviously.
And then what was your experience like as a student athlete? So what are something that you experienced, as an athlete that you now instill in your players as something that you learned with the kids that you work with now?
Well, that's another thing. I definitely, as a student athlete, it's almost laughable to even call myself that, just because I barely got by. I was one of those kids that barely got by in school, and I just did it because I wanted to play basketball, so I never really took school serious, which of course affected me in terms of grades and things like that. But the part that I regret the most is the learning aspect of school. We don't think of school as a place to learn. It's just a place where we're more concerned with opportunistic goals. So it's going to get me to college, so then I go through college, so then I can get a good job, But I wish that as a student athlete, I would have taken it taking school as serious as I did with basketball, in terms of with basketball, you go to practice and things like that because you want to learn so that you can be the best basketball player that you could possibly be. I wish I would have taken school the same way as far as going to school to learn so that I could be the best me that I could possibly be, so just being a student athlete that focuses on school and the academic part of it just helps you as far as being a more holistic individual, your personal growth. I think is so huge if you can get that into your head in high school as far as the importance of personal growth. I think that, you'll just be so much better prepared for life as opposed to just, skating through just to play basketball. So that's the one lesson that I've taken with me as far as my experience as a student athlete, and helped out the student athletes that I coach today with.
And how do you implement or even, talk about those things with the student athletes that you work with on the personal mindset of growth, the personal development of growth, as well as understanding what it means to learn, in the classroom as well?
Really it starts with self-love. So I think that that's a big thing that we have to teach kids to be able to do. And we tell them all the time, you got to love yourself. But it's like, how do you do that? And really, I think it's teaching kids that love is about, it's not just a feeling. You can't just say, oh, I feel like I love basketball, but it's a verb. So it's like, what are you doing? Are your actions in alignment with what you say? So as a student athlete, or, in high school, when it comes to being your best in personal growth, you're going to want to be your best and you're going to want to grow if you truly love yourself. So your actions have to be in alignment with that. If I truly love myself, I got to make sure that I'm applying myself and doing the best that I can in everything that it is that I'm doing that's going to help me to be a better me.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's just making sure that basically that our actions are in alignment with what, our goals are and what we say about ourselves.
Yes, I definitely agree. Self-love, self-worth is the foundation of, my business, Be The Soto. So I definitely hear what you're saying and understand the importance of it. And you're right. It's all about taking action. It's one thing to say it, but to take action, it takes things to a whole nother level. Just like saying, I want to be a great basketball player or whatever it is that I want to do. It's great to say it, but what's the action, the work that I'm willing to put in to attain what I'm saying that I want? So that's where the work really comes in, and that's the hard part,
Exactly.
'cause it's not easy. It's not easy. I know it's not easy. Self-love is not it's just so easy. Even working on my game, it was never easy,
Right.
So, putting in the effort into school to be the student athlete, to learn, that stuff is not easy, but it shows what we have inside of us and what we're capable of doing, not just in sports or school, but in any area of our life, relationships with our own selves, and the growth that we can develop as well. So yeah, I appreciate that, you're instilling that in the athletes that you work with. And then, so you have From the Blacktop. So how was that created? How did you come up with that concept of From the Blacktop?
From the Blacktop was actually formerly known as Team Intensity. And with Team Intensity, we were focused on skill development, but we also were very focused on taking teams to compete in tournaments. So with From the Blacktop, I kind of wanted to flip it and just, well, first of all, we got the name because the blacktop represents the point and place from which you begin to work towards your biggest goals and dreams, which I think the blacktop represents that for a lot of ball players. So that's how we got the name. And then we just really wanted to emphasize the individual. So not so much competing in games, but making sure that the individual is developing. So we provide individual skill development training and small group skill development training. We still do form teams and compete in tournaments. But the whole ethos of From the Blacktop is basically to create an educative and developmental environment where deep learning is taking place so that players are able to, to transfer the skills that are being developed to games. Without transfer, there's nothing. So that's the biggest part of what we do. And we do that by making sure that anything that we do that's competitive, as far as in practice or in games, we not only encourage, but we enforce players to utilize what it is that we've been developing in practices. So mistakes are fine. We don't get upset about mistakes. We don't really constrain them, going back to what we talked about earlier, we don't really constrain them with X's and O's and things like that, because we really want to develop creative, highly skilled players capable of thinking the game. So, which every coach wants one of those on their team. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what we do and what we're about with From the Blacktop.
That's awesome. And so what have you, like, I've seen like where your kids have developed, like they've made like all league teams, county teams, things like that. So what is something that you've learned from one of your players you learned something about yourself that's helped you grow from somebody that you've worked with as either like someone that you coach on the girls basketball team or as one of your skill development players as well?
That's a good one. I've learned so much from the kids that I've coached. It's hard to even pick, but I think probably the biggest thing that I've learned as of late would be just understanding the power in my words as a coach and somebody who's so important in their lives, so effective communication, constantly making sure that I'm up to date with them and I'm checking in on them, making sure that they understand that they're more than just a basketball player to me. And going back to that love thing, that love is a verb, making sure that I'm not just taking, and having these players, like, what can you do for me to make me look good as a coach? But it's like I'm constantly giving of myself and extending myself to make sure I'm there for them. But, more specifically, telling them that I'm proud of them before they even accomplish those things. I think that we get so focused as adults, adults, parents, coaches, teachers, all of us, we get so focused on like the end goal, the destination, that we forget, that these are people that are evolving and growing in front of us. And we have to constantly encourage them and let them know that we're proud of them before they even get to that point. Or if they ever, they may not ever even get to that point. So I think that's something that has been super beneficial for the players that I've coached, is just that they know that as long as they're constantly working towards evolving and growing, that they should be proud of themselves, and because life is all about evolution.
Yeah, and even listening to you say that, it's a reminder, like even as adults or people in general, it is about like that journey. A lot of the times, like I've been focused like the destination. I want the goal. I want the goal. I want the goal. Yep. And it's forgetting like all the little things that go in between that you encounter, the adversity, the highs, the lows, things like that. And it's like, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't feel like it's good enough because I don't have the destination yet. And it's really just focusing on every moment and being present in every moment and appreciating it for what it is in that moment, and as to what I'm learning, how am I getting better? I'm doing something that I didn't do yesterday, whatever it may be. And those are all steps that are part of the journey, because that's what matters. Is like, once again, goes back to action, the verb, am I taking action? And that's really what matters. And it's to remember those mini victories that we have, the micro wins that we encounter. Like today I did something. Today is the second day I woke up early to train with Amber. That's something that I never have done. And that's something that should be applauded. Like it's the little things that we do that really show us and take us to that next level that we didn't even probably see ourselves attaining,
Absolutely.
So it's very, very important and great. And then, so when you working with kids, and we can go back to learning, what are the tools, or who are you getting your information from? Like, how do you learn? How do you, get your studies in order to implement that and give it back to the kids as well as the information that you're gaining? Like, where do you get your knowledge and studies from?
I mean, we are in the information age. Like, there is no excuse for not being knowledgeable about something that you totally love and are passionate about. So, I mean, for me, it's just, libraries, books. I reach out, there's so many platforms, social media platforms, that it's easy to reach out to people who are maybe more experienced than you, or, have more knowledge than you on a specific topic. So I've actually reached out to neuroscientists, on social media platforms. I reach out to physical therapists, to people who specialize in biomechanics and physiology, And then, of course, there's always the internet. The internet is like, I mean, you can find absolutely anything you possibly want to know about on the internet, So there are plenty of resources and tools, that are available to almost everybody, where that have helped me tremendously as far as gaining knowledge. But I think for me, I read a lot, but being able to make connections with people has been very big for me as far as gaining knowledge on certain topics.
Yeah, connections are so important, right? I mean, that's really how the world goes around, is like how we all connect with each other, and the information that you get from someone else, you connect that, and then you feed it into like one of your students or players, or even a coach of yours, a friend, somebody that you're having a conversation with. It doesn't have to be, one of your players, and then they go and share that information, and then your player takes that in and they go share it with one of their friends. They're like, look what I'm doing, and they're like, hey, how'd you do that, or whatever it is. And so it's like, it just shows how important connection with communication is. It's not just to say I have a long friends list, but how do I communicate with that
Right.
network, basically, right, to share that information. Something that like I heard from you that like kind of stood out to me is freedom. So I want to know, it sounds like freedom is something not only that you've experienced, like in terms of like, oh, I don't want to be a constraint player where there's like, it's all focused on running the play at X's and O's and being creative. So what does freedom represent to you in your life, like in general?
I would say doing what you love to do, not just what you love to do, but what you're passionate about. So what's emotionally compelling for you. So you have to do it, being able to do that every single day, day in and day out, absolutely makes me feel free. And I think it's freeing because going back to what I said earlier about telling kids you're proud of them before they get to, a destination. I see all these kids, I talk to them about what they want to do as far as their careers or in their lives. They all say like the typical, successful careers, like, oh, I'll be a lawyer, or I'll be a cop. And it's like, oh, well, why? Is that what you really want to do? So freedom is about creating your own standards for your life. So thinking about what you look like without conforming to what everybody else says you should be doing, without maybe taking the path that everybody else says you should be taking, and just focus on your own growth and spending every day doing things that you absolutely love to do and that you are consumed with passion for. So for me, that's what it means to really truly be free.
Can you name one example in your life how you're free?
Yeah. So for me, which has kind of been, it was a struggle for me for a while, is, I didn't go to a university, and the first thing that people, they'll start talking to you and having a conversation with you, and the first thing they'll ask you is like, oh, where'd you go to school, And it could be a little, it's something that can make you a little bit insecure about yourself, because we value people based on, what schools, universities they went to, based on how much money they make, and So for me, when I really broke out of that and just decided that I was just going to be, a self-learner, because that's what works for me, that I was going to take my own path, and, instead of getting a 9-to-5 job or whatever, I was going to do what it is that I love to do, which is coaching and training and mentoring youth basketball players. That's what's really been freeing for me.
I can relate to what you're saying when it comes to school, only because we do get the question, like, where'd you go to school? And for me, at one point I felt like, well, I went to a D2 school. So it's like, oh, I didn't go D1. Does that mean I'm not good enough or whatever? All these questions come into play, because it's like, oh, you played D2. And it's like automatically we assume because if you don't play Division I basketball, then your stock lowers. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it has nothing to do with that. Because for me, it was really about, I chose the best school. And it was my experiences that made me love where I went to school. The people that I connected with, the friends that I still have, the experiences, the places we traveled to, the stories that we got, also like my education. So all those things matter, and it really is to be proud of, where you've come from and what you've done. And there doesn't mean that you're less than anybody else just because your story's not different, or because those schools aren't the ones highlighted, on ESPN and things like that. You know, everyone is a highlight in their very own way. And it's knowing that and sharing that story because there's other people who feel the same way and letting them know that it's okay. You know, share the story to know, like, I'm still doing great things. This doesn't mean that I'm a mediocre person because there's a Division II behind my school as to where I played athletically, or
Right.
NAIA or Division III or whatever it is. It's junior college. You know, be proud of those accomplishments. Once again, going back to the journey and not necessarily the destination.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Amber. I want to thank you for being on the show. I definitely loved your vulnerability and, you know, talking about different things on how we help the youth through self-love, self-worth, learning, also like saying, being proud of somebody before it actually happens. Like, let's not wait for it to happen to be proud, because that's where we gain inspiration and motivation to keep going, is because we haven't done it yet. So it's like we all need that pat on the back, the motivation, you know, you got this type deal. So I applaud you and all the great work that you're doing with all the youth that you're working with. I definitely see what you're doing, and I think it's beautiful and great. And may you continue on, keeping on, doing really great things with our youth in general, not just athletes, but they're people, you know, and that's what's most important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Michelle.
Yeah, and so one more thing before you go, you have to finish this sentence. I am grateful for.
Ooh, love.
We'll
I'm
take
grateful.
it.
Yep.
That is beautiful. Well, once again, Amber, thank you for being on the Mime Right Game Type Show. Treasure yourself and shine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
You're welcome.